In a time when courage was as valuable as gold, there stood out a man whose name would echo through the centuries. Joshua, son of Nun. Originating from the tribe of Ephraim, he was not just another face in the crowd wandering through the desert. No, Joshua was special, endowed with a bravery that made hearts beat faster and skills that left many in awe. For 4 decades, while the people of Israel traversed the scorching sands of the desert, Joshua revealed himself as a formidable warrior, a born leader. Imagine this. Under the relentless sun, with scarce resources and lurking dangers, Joshua not only survived but thrived. His skill with the sword was legendary, they say. But it wasn't just that. What truly set him apart was his ability to think strategically, to stay calm when everyone around him was losing their heads. It was as if he had a sixth sense to anticipate the enemy's moves, a skill that would later prove crucial. But don't be mistaken into thinking Joshua was just muscles and strategy. His true strength came from something deeper, an unshakable faith. Amidst the adversities of the desert, when many questioned and doubted, Joshua stood firm in his trust in the Lord. It was this faith that propelled him, that made him see possibilities where others saw only obstacles. And it wasn't a blind faith, but a conviction based on lived experiences, on fulfilled promises. As the years passed, Joshua became not just a respected warrior, but an example for all the people. Young men watched him with admiration, dreaming of one day being like him. Adults sought his advice, trusting in his wisdom. Even the elders, those who had seen it all, recognized a special quality in him. It was as if Joshua carried with him a flame, a light that illuminated the path not just for himself, but for everyone around him. And what a challenging path it was. The desert did not forgive the weak, but Joshua seemed to draw strength from the very difficulties. Each obstacle overcome was a lesson learned, each victory a confirmation of his calling. He did not just fight physical battles, but also spiritual ones. In an environment where discouragement could easily take root, Joshua was like a beacon of hope, reminding everyone of the divine promise that awaited them. But don't think Joshua was perfect. Like every human being, he had his doubts, his moments of weakness. The difference lay in how he dealt with these situations. Instead of letting himself be overcome, Joshua sought strength in prayer, in the counsel of the wise, in meditating on divine laws. It was a constant process of learning and growth, a journey that shaped him not just as a warrior, but as a man. One of the greatest lessons we can take from Joshua's life is the importance of perseverance combined with faith. How many of us, faced with a desert in our lives, think about giving up? Joshua teaches us that it is precisely in these moments that we must cling more firmly to our convictions, seeking in God the strength we lack. Think, what is your current desert? A difficult job, a complicated relationship? Whatever it is, know that, like Joshua, you can find the strength to persevere. Another fascinating aspect of Joshua's journey is how he managed to balance strength and compassion. Yes, he was a fearsome warrior, but he was also known for his empathy, his ability to listen and understand the people's needs. In a world that often values only brute strength, Joshua reminds us of the importance of also cultivating the qualities of the heart. How can you apply this in your life? How about starting with active listening, really seeking to understand others before judging? As the years in the desert came to an end, Joshua faced a new challenge: the transition from follower to leader. The skills and courage he had demonstrated thus far would be tested in unimaginable ways. But one thing was certain: all the experiences lived in the desert, all the battles faced, all the moments of doubt overcome, all this had prepared Joshua for what was to come. He was ready to lead the people to the promised land, to face giants and tear down walls. And so, as we reflect on Joshua's life up to this point, we cannot help but ask ourselves, what promised lands await us? What walls do we need to tear down in our lives? Joshua's skills and courage were not exclusive to him. Each of us has the potential for great deeds, to overcome seemingly insurmountable adversities. The question is, are we willing to develop our skills, cultivate our courage, strengthen our faith as Joshua did? When Moses gathered the leaders of the tribes of Israel, there was a palpable expectation in the air. The promised land, Canaan, was near, but the unknown always brings a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It was in this context that Joshua, along with 11 other men, was given a crucial mission: to explore the land that had been promised to them. Imagine the responsibility on the shoulders of these 12 men. They were not on a simple reconnaissance expedition, but carried with them the hopes and dreams of an entire nation. The journey was not easy. For 40 days, Joshua and his companions traveled Canaan from north to south, east to west. They observed everything: the fertility of the soil, the strength of the fortified cities, the customs of the inhabitants. Every detail was important. Every piece of information could be crucial to Israel's future. But while some saw only insurmountable obstacles, Joshua saw opportunities. Where others trembled before the giants who inhabited the land, he saw the chance for God to demonstrate his power. Upon their return, the 12 spies had drastically different visions. 10 of them were terrified, painting a grim picture of a land that devours its inhabitants. But Joshua and Caleb stood out. They did not deny the challenges, but their perspective was radically different. "If the Lord is pleased with us," they declared, "He will certainly bring us into this land and give it to us." This was not blind or naive faith. It was confidence founded on experience, on the knowledge of God's character, and on the understanding of His promises. The reaction of Joshua and Caleb teaches us a valuable lesson about perspective. How many times in our lives do we encounter situations that seem impossible? A new job that seems beyond our capabilities, a relationship that needs healing, a dream that seems unreachable. The difference between success and failure often lies in how we choose to see these situations. Joshua teaches us to look beyond the obstacles and focus on God's promises and power. But Joshua's faith was not simply a matter of thinking positively. It was rooted in a deep understanding of God's character and His promises. He had witnessed the liberation from Egypt, seen the Red Sea part, experienced manna in the desert. For Joshua, the question was not whether God could fulfill His promise, but how he would choose to do so. This is a lesson for us. Our faith grows as we reflect on how God has been faithful in our lives and the lives of those around us. Joshua and Caleb's courage to stand against the majority is another notable aspect of this story. It is not easy to be the dissenting voice, especially when the majority is dominated by fear. But sometimes, leadership requires exactly that: the courage to stand for the truth, even when it is not popular. In our current society, where the pressure to conform can be intense, Joshua's example challenges us to remain firm in our convictions, especially when they align with God's will. Unfortunately, the voice of Joshua and Caleb's faith was drowned out by the clamor of fear and disbelief. The people, influenced by the negative report of the other 10 spies, rebelled against the idea of entering the Promised Land. This episode reminds us of the power of words and the importance of choosing carefully whom we listen to. In a world flooded with information, the loudest or most popular voices are not always the wisest or truest. The consequences of this lack of faith were severe. God decreed that that generation would wander in the desert for 40 years until all the adults who had rejected His promise had died. Only Joshua and Caleb, among all the adults who left Egypt, would be allowed to enter the Promised Land. This part of the story reminds us that our choices have consequences, sometimes affecting not only ourselves, but future generations. For Joshua, the next 40 years would be a time of learning, growth, and preparation. He saw an entire generation pass away, but his faith and vision remained unshaken. What an example of perseverance! Many of us would give up if our dreams were delayed for so long. But Joshua teaches us that sometimes the path to our personal Canaan can be long and winding. The key is to keep our eyes fixed on the promise, trusting that God's timing is perfect. Reflecting on this part of Joshua's story, we are challenged to examine our own lives. What are the Canaans that God has promised us? What giants intimidate us and make us want to retreat? Joshua's example encourages us to face our fears with faith, to see opportunities where others see only obstacles. Perhaps it is time to take that step of faith you have been putting off, to believe that with God, the impossible becomes possible. The transition of leadership is a crucial moment in any organization, and in the history of Israel, it was no different. After decades under the leadership of Moses, the people were about to face a significant change. Moses, the liberator, the lawgiver, the man who spoke with God face to face, was coming to the end of his earthly journey. And who would be chosen to fill those enormous shoes? None other than Joshua, the faithful assistant, the courageous spy, the man who had demonstrated unwavering faith over the years. The transition process was neither abrupt nor left to chance. Moses, guided by God, began preparing Joshua long before the moment of succession. Imagine the scene. Moses, bearing the weight of years and responsibility on his shoulders, calling Joshua for private conversations, sharing his wisdom, experiences, fears, and hopes. This mentorship was not just about transmitting information, but about shaping the character of a leader. One of the most powerful moments of this transition occurred when Moses, before all the people, anointed Joshua as his successor. He laid his hands on Joshua, a gesture loaded with symbolism and spiritual power. It was more than a ceremony. It was a tangible transfer of authority and responsibility. For Joshua, it must have been a moment of deep emotion and perhaps some apprehension. After all, leading such a large and often rebellious people was not a task for the faint-hearted. But the final confirmation of Joshua's leadership did not come from Moses, but from God himself. The Lord spoke directly to Joshua, reaffirming his choice and his promises. "As I was with Moses, so I will be with you," God assured Joshua. What powerful words! They not only validated Joshua's position, but also promised God's continuous presence and support. For any leader, knowing they are not alone, that they have the backing of the Almighty, is a source of immense courage and confidence. This leadership transition offers several valuable lessons. First, the importance of preparation. Joshua was not suddenly thrown into leadership. He had years of training under Moses' mentorship. In our own lives, whether at work, in the family, or the community, how can we prepare for future responsibilities? What skills do we need to develop? What mentors can we seek? Another crucial lesson is the importance of public affirmation. Moses not only prepared Joshua behind the scenes, but also publicly presented him as the new leader. This helped establish Joshua's authority and facilitated the people's acceptance. In our own leadership transitions, whether passing the baton or taking on new responsibilities, how can we ensure there is clarity and public support? Joshua's humility during this process is also noteworthy. Despite being chosen for a position of great honor and responsibility, we do not see Joshua boasting or acting arrogantly. On the contrary, he seems to have approached his new role with a deep sense of responsibility and dependence on God. This is a valuable lesson for all of us. True leadership is not about status or personal power, but about service and submission to a higher calling. God's support for Joshua reminds us that when we are aligned with divine purpose, we can count on His presence and power. This does not mean we will not face challenges. Joshua certainly faced many, but that we are not alone in these challenges. In your own life, how can you seek this alignment with God's purpose? How could this change your approach to the challenges you face? The transition from Moses to Joshua also teaches us about the importance of passing the baton at the right time. Moses recognized that his time was coming to an end, and that it was time for new leadership to take over. This requires humility and wisdom. In our own lives and careers, how can we recognize when it is time to step back and allow others to lead? For the people of Israel, this transition must have been a moment of mixed emotions. There was undoubtedly sadness for Moses' impending departure, but also hope and expectation for what was to come under Joshua's leadership. Changes, even when necessary and positive, can be challenging. How can we navigate transitions in our own lives with grace and confidence? The moment had arrived. After years of wandering in the desert, the people of Israel were finally at the edge of the Jordan River, with the promised land in sight. Joshua, now firmly established as the leader, faced his first major challenge, leading an entire nation across a raging river. It was not a simple task, especially considering they were in the flood season when the Jordan overflowed its banks. In the face of this seemingly impossible situation, Joshua demonstrated remarkable leadership. He was not shaken by the size of the obstacle. Instead, he trusted in the divine instructions and conveyed them to the people with clarity and conviction. "Sanctify yourselves," he told the people, "for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you." These words were not just an order but a promise, a reminder that they were about to witness something extraordinary. The instructions were precise. The priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant should enter the waters first. It was an act of pure and simple faith. Imagine the scene: the priests advancing toward the turbulent waters, carrying the most sacred symbol of their faith. The people watched, probably with a mix of fear and anticipation. What would happen when the priests' feet touched the water? What followed was nothing short of miraculous. As soon as the priests' feet touched the edge of the water, the river stopped flowing. The waters that came from upstream piled up, forming a wall, while the waters flowing down to the Dead Sea completely receded. A dry path emerged in the middle of the river, allowing all the people to cross. This event was not just a demonstration of divine power, but also a powerful affirmation of Joshua's leadership. Just as God had parted the Red Sea for Moses, now he parted the Jordan for Joshua. It was a clear sign to all the people that God was with Joshua, just as he had been with Moses. Crossing the Jordan was a moment of great symbolic significance. It marked the end of an era of wandering in the desert and the beginning of a new phase in Israel's history. It was the tangible fulfillment of a promise made generations ago. For many in the people born and raised in the desert, it was the first time they set foot in the land that had been promised to them. Joshua, always mindful of the importance of preserving the memory of this event, ordered 12 men, one from each tribe, to take stones from the middle of the river. These stones would be erected as a memorial at the place where they would camp that night. In the future, Joshua explained, when your children ask, "What do these stones mean?" you will tell them how the Jordan stopped flowing when the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord crossed it. This act of raising a memorial was not just about commemorating a past miracle. It was a way to anchor the faith of future generations. Joshua understood that faith needs to be nurtured, and that stories of divine provision need to be passed down from generation to generation. Crossing the Jordan also served to strengthen Joshua's position as a leader. The biblical text tells us that, on that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they respected him all the days of his life, just as they had respected Moses. This public validation was crucial for solidifying Joshua's authority and uniting the people under his leadership. Upon completing the crossing, the people of Israel found themselves in a new reality. The desert was behind them, and ahead was the land that had been promised to them. However, they knew that great challenges still awaited them. Fortified cities, powerful armies, and peoples long established in the land would have to be faced. But at that moment, on the banks of the Jordan, with their feet still wet from the miraculous crossing, the people of Israel were full of confidence and hope. They had witnessed God's power in action and had a leader who guided them with faith and courage. The future, though uncertain, seemed full of possibilities. After the miraculous crossing of the Jordan, Joshua and the people of Israel faced their next great challenge, the fortified city of Jericho. This was no ordinary city. Jericho was known for its imposing walls, considered impenetrable. For many, conquering Jericho seemed an impossible task, especially for a people who had spent the last decades wandering in the desert. But Joshua, true to his nature, sought divine guidance. And the instructions he received were, to say the least, unusual. The battle plan did not involve war machines or conventional military strategies. Instead, God ordered the people to march around the city once a day for 6 days, with the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant and blowing trumpets. On the 7th day, they were to march around the city 7 times, and at the sound of a long trumpet blast, the entire people were to shout. Imagine the scene: the inhabitants of Jericho, probably already nervous about the presence of the Israelite army, watching day after day this strange procession. Perhaps they even found it comical at first. But as the days passed, the tension must have increased. What did it all mean? What would be the Israelites' next move? For Joshua and his people, this strategy was a test of faith and obedience. It made no sense from a military standpoint. Marching in silence day after day must have tested the patience of many. Some may have questioned their leader's wisdom, but Joshua remained firm, confident in the divine instructions. On the 7th day, as ordered, the people marched 7 times around the city. At the sound of the prolonged trumpet blast, Joshua gave the command, "Shout, the Lord has given you the city." And then, something extraordinary happened. The walls of Jericho, those same walls that seemed so impenetrable, simply collapsed. The collapse of Jericho's walls was not just a military victory, but a powerful demonstration of God's power and the effectiveness of His people's faith and obedience. For the Israelites, it was a dramatic confirmation that God was fulfilling His promise to give them the land. The fall of Jericho also served as a warning to the other nations of Canaan. The news of this miraculous conquest surely spread quickly, instilling fear in the hearts of neighboring peoples. Who could resist a people whose God could bring down walls with the sound of a shout? After the victory, Joshua gave specific instructions on how the people should proceed. The city and everything in it were to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab, the woman who had helped the Israelite spies earlier, and her family were to be spared. This order demonstrated both Joshua's seriousness in following divine commands and his faithfulness in keeping promises. The conquest of Jericho was a decisive moment in Israel's campaign to take possession of the promised land. It was the first major victory on Canaanite soil and set a pattern for the battles to come. More than that, it was a powerful lesson in trusting and obeying God, even when His methods seemed to defy human logic. For Joshua personally, the victory at Jericho must have been a powerful confirmation of his calling and leadership. He had led the people not only across the Jordan, but now to their first major conquest in the Promised Land. His faith and obedience were bearing visible fruit. The story of Jericho's fall became one of the most well-known and cited accounts in the Bible, symbolizing the power of faith to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. For generations of believers, it has served as a reminder that with God, nothing is impossible. While the people celebrated this extraordinary victory, Joshua knew this was just the beginning. Many other cities and peoples still needed to be conquered. But the fall of Jericho had set a powerful precedent. The people of Israel now advanced with renewed confidence, knowing that as long as they faithfully followed God and His chosen leader, no wall would be too high, no enemy too strong. Throughout his journey as Israel's leader, Joshua demonstrated unwavering faithfulness and obedience to God. This characteristic was not manifested only in isolated moments, but permeated his entire life and leadership. From the beginning, when he was chosen as one of the 12 spies to explore Canaan, Joshua showed extraordinary faith. While most of the spies were discouraged by fear, Joshua, along with Caleb, remained confident in God's promise. This faithfulness in the face of adversity would become a hallmark of his leadership. During the conquest of Canaan, Joshua faithfully followed divine instructions, no matter how unusual they seemed. The siege of Jericho is a perfect example. Marching around the city for 7 days made no sense militarily, but Joshua obeyed without question, demonstrating complete trust in the divine strategy. Joshua's obedience extended beyond battles. He meticulously followed God's instructions for distributing the land among the tribes. Even when faced with special requests or complaints, Joshua sought divine guidance and acted accordingly. A notable example of Joshua's faithfulness was his response to Achan's sin. After the defeat at Ai, Joshua sought God and discovered that an Israelite had disobeyed the divine command by taking consecrated items from Jericho. Joshua did not hesitate to address the situation, even if it meant punishing a member of his own people. His obedience to God's law was above any favoritism or personal consideration. Joshua also showed faithfulness by maintaining Israel's spiritual traditions and practices. He ensured that circumcision was performed after entering Canaan, restoring this important covenant sign that had been neglected during the years in the desert. Additionally, he led the celebration of Passover, reaffirming the people's connection to their history of deliverance. Joshua's obedience extended to even seemingly minor details. For example, he faithfully followed Moses' instructions to establish cities of refuge, providing a merciful justice system for those who committed accidental homicide. Perhaps one of the most impressive aspects of Joshua's faithfulness was his consistency over time. From the beginning to the end of his leadership, he maintained his commitment to God. He did not let success make him complacent, nor challenges discourage him. Joshua's faithfulness and obedience were not based on rigid legalism, but on a deep relationship with God. He understood that following God was not a burden, but the path to true freedom and blessing for the people. Joshua's example serves as a powerful reminder that true spiritual leadership is grounded in personal faithfulness to God. His life demonstrates that consistent obedience, even in the face of challenges and uncertainties, is the way to fulfill God's purpose. After the initial military conquests, Joshua faced a new challenge: distributing the land among the tribes of Israel. This was not just a simple task of territorial administration, but a crucial moment in fulfilling the divine promise made to the patriarchs centuries before. The process of distributing the land was meticulous and divinely guided. Joshua, along with the priest Eleazar and the tribal leaders, used the casting of lots to determine which portion of land each tribe would receive. This method was not seen as mere chance, but as a way to seek God's will in the distribution. The division began with the allocation of land to the tribes of Judah, Ephraim, and half the tribe of Manasseh. These tribes received their portions first, partly due to their prominence and size. The tribe of Judah in particular received a large portion in the south, including fertile and strategic areas. An interesting aspect of the distribution was the treatment of the tribe of Levi. Unlike the other tribes, the Levites did not receive a contiguous portion of land. Instead, they were given cities scattered throughout the territory of Israel. This dispersion of the Levites had a spiritual purpose: to ensure that those responsible for religious service were present in all regions of the country. Joshua also had to deal with special situations. For example, the daughters of Zelophehad, who had no brothers, came to Joshua claiming their father's inheritance. Joshua, faithful to Moses' earlier decision, granted them the land, establishing an important precedent for women's inheritance rights. The distribution of the land was not without challenges. Some tribes, such as Joseph's, argued that the portion they received was too small for their population. Joshua responded wisely, encouraging them to clear more land in the forested areas and to conquer additional territories from the Canaanites. A significant moment occurred when Joshua granted Caleb, his old spying companion, the city of Hebron. Caleb, now 85 years old, still demonstrated the same faith and vigor he had 45 years earlier when he first explored Canaan. This grant was not just a reward for Caleb's faithfulness, but also a powerful reminder of God's faithfulness in fulfilling his promises. As the distribution progressed, it became clear that this was not just an exercise in territorial division. It was the tangible fulfillment of God's promises, the realization of a dream that had sustained the people through centuries of slavery and wandering. Each family receiving their portion of land was, in fact, taking possession of a divine inheritance. Joshua ensured that the distribution was done fairly and transparently. He understood that the way this division was conducted would have lasting implications for the harmony and stability of the nation. His leadership in this process was marked by a combination of respect for divine will and sensitivity to the people's needs and concerns. The conclusion of the land distribution marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. The people of Israel, once a nomadic nation, were now established in their own land. Each tribe had its own territory to develop and cultivate. It was the beginning of a new phase in Israel's history, one that would bring new challenges and responsibilities. For Joshua, the conclusion of the land distribution must have been a moment of deep satisfaction. He had not only led the people in the conquest of the land, but also ensured that each tribe received their promised portion. It was the fulfillment of a mission that began decades earlier, when he and Caleb were the only ones to bring a positive report about the land. The distribution of the land under Joshua's leadership established the territorial pattern that would influence Israel's history for centuries. The boundaries defined during this period would become important references in the identity and political and social organization of the Hebrew people. At the end of his long and remarkable life, Joshua once again gathered the leaders of Israel at Shechem. This meeting, which would be his last, was not just a farewell, but a crucial opportunity to solidify his spiritual legacy and reaffirm Israel's commitment to God. In this final meeting, Joshua delivered a powerful and moving speech. He began by recounting Israel's history, from Abraham's call to that very moment. This recap was not merely a history lesson, but a vivid reminder of God's faithfulness through the generations and the numerous times he had intervened on behalf of his people. With the wisdom of an experienced leader and the passion of a man deeply committed to God, Joshua then issued a final challenge to the people. Choose this day whom you will serve. This was not a rhetorical question but a call to decision. Joshua was asking the people to consciously renew their commitment to God. In a moment of inspiring leadership, Joshua declared his own stance. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. With these words, he not only reaffirmed his own devotion, but also set a powerful example for the entire nation. It was a reminder that faith is not just a national issue, but also a personal and family decision. The people responded enthusiastically, promising to serve the Lord. However, Joshua was not content with a superficial response. He warned the people about the seriousness of this commitment, reminding them of God's holiness and the consequences of infidelity. He wanted to ensure they fully understood what they were pledging. To seal this renewed commitment, Joshua did something significant. He wrote these words in the book of the law of God and erected a large stone as a witness. This symbolic act would serve as a permanent reminder for future generations of the covenant made that day. Joshua's spiritual legacy was not limited to this final gathering. Throughout his life, he had consistently demonstrated unwavering faith and obedience to God. From his courage as one of the 12 spies, through his leadership in the conquest of Canaan, to his fair administration in the distribution of the land, Joshua always placed his trust in God. One of the most notable aspects of Joshua's legacy was his ability to inspire faith in others. The book of Joshua tells us that Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and of the elders who outlived him and who had experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. This statement is a powerful testament to Joshua's lasting influence. Joshua also left an example of how to lead with integrity and purpose. He did not just talk about faithfulness to God, he lived it daily. His leadership was characterized by a combination of courage, humility, and unwavering obedience to divine commandments. Joshua's legacy was so significant that its impact extended far beyond his own generation. His actions and teachings became a fundamental part of Israel's history and spiritual identity. Future generations would look to Joshua as an example of faith and godly leadership. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of Joshua's spiritual legacy is the model he set of a life wholly dedicated to God. He demonstrated that true greatness does not come from personal achievements, but from faithful obedience to divine will. Joshua's life serves as a powerful reminder that an individual committed to God can have a transformative impact on an entire nation. His legacy continues to inspire leaders and believers today, reminding us of the importance of faith, courage, and obedience in our spiritual journey. Joshua's life challenges us to reflect on our own journey of faith. How often do we face walls of Jericho in our lives? Obstacles that seem insurmountable, challenges that make us question if we can move forward. Joshua's example reminds us that with faith and obedience, we can face even the most intimidating challenges. Think for a moment. What is your personal Jordan? What seemingly impossible river do you face in your life? Perhaps it is a career goal that seems unattainable, a relationship that needs healing, or a dream you have almost given up on pursuing. Joshua's story encourages us to take that step of faith, trusting that just as the waters parted for the Israelites, a way will open for us. But remember, Joshua's journey was not just about great miracles and epic conquests. It was also about faithfulness in the small things, about staying faithful day after day, decision after decision. How can we cultivate this same faithfulness in our daily lives? What small acts of obedience and faith can we practice today that over time will shape our character and destiny? Joshua's legacy challenges us to think beyond ourselves. Just as he was concerned with leaving a spiritual legacy for future generations of Israel, what legacy are we building? What values, what examples are we leaving for those who come after us? Now I want to provoke you to act. Don't let this story remain just on the pages of history or the words of this text. What concrete action can you take today, inspired by Joshua's example? Maybe it's facing a fear, forgiving someone, taking a step toward a long-postponed dream. Whatever it is, remember, Just as Joshua was not alone on his journey, you are not alone either. And you, what did you think of this journey through Joshua's life? What lessons impacted you the most? Share in the comments below. Your perspective might be exactly what someone needs to hear today. If you want to keep exploring inspiring stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We have much more amazing content coming, and we don't want you to miss anything. Remember, just like Joshua, you too are called to great things. The question is, are you ready to answer that call? Until the next video, may you
let the Word of God touch your heart, like a light guiding you through the darkest moments. Every step in faith is a journey filled with hope. We are never alone on this path, for He is always by our side. Open your heart and let His love transform you, helping you spread that light to those around you.
find your own promised land.
Let the Word of God touch your heart, like a light guiding you through the darkest moments. Every step in faith is a journey filled with hope. We are never alone on this path, for He is always by our side. Open your heart and let His love transform you, helping you spread that light to those around you.